Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sutherland Institute Congressional Series, hosted by our good friends here at the Hinckley Institute of Politics at the University of Utah. We're very grateful for this beautiful venue and this partnership to have these conversations. We also are very grateful to our sponsor, Zions Bank, for making these conversations possible. The Congressional Series from Sutherland Institute exists to have these kinds of conversations, to discuss public policy issues that are important to all of us, and especially to you as voters and students here, in a way that can help connect constituents with elected officials and gain better understanding of important policy issues. And these kinds of conversations are more important than ever. So we're grateful to all of you being with us here in the room and for those watching online as well. So we'll jump right into the conversation. I'll hand things over to Jason Perry to have our conversation with Congresswoman Celeste Maloy.
Well, thank you, and thank you everyone for being here today. School's going okay? All right, so far so good. This is going to be a great opportunity for us to be with Congresswoman Celeste Maloy today. And some of you have participated in these candidate conversations in the past, as you know, asked some questions, but the Congresswoman had a different idea for today.
We're going to change the formula.
We're changing it up a little bit, and you will be part of the discussion today. So we're going to do a couple of things if you're okay with it. Usually we say, don't have your phones out. Today is going to be a day to have your phone out because the Congresswoman has come up with some questions. We have added a bunch of questions to this as well. And this is going to be an interactive sort of demonstration, not just some sort of understanding where you are in terms of your understanding what's happening with current issues, but also we're going to have some pretty interesting questions about you as students. How do you feel about being politically engaged? Do you feel safe to be politically engaged? For those of you who are students here on the campus, you may have a political view. Or do you feel safe saying it here on campus? All completely anonymous. All right, of course, this is not one of those things where you know where it's coming from, but the Congresswoman feels like we should have this, and I totally agree. These are conversations worth having. So I think you're going to love this. Whole new format for us. You're going to get a chance to participate. Are you game? All right. How about a couple just...
That was unenthusiastic.
I saw some nods.
Okay.
All right. It just got better.
We're going to do it anyway.
Okay. It just got better. Not very often do you get to have real-time feedback, but let's do a couple questions, sort of just level set how connected people are politically, because we have lots of folks that have different things they're interested in. But this is our test right here. Y'all have your phone? You ready to go? This is the first question. Do you know who your state representative is? All right? There's no judgment. We're just kind of understanding. Just kind of see, because particularly if you are their representative, right?
Well, I'd be their federal rep, so.
Oh, I did say state, didn't
And
I? Your state rep, yes.
We can't check if they're right, if they think
Of
they know
course
who their
not.
state rep is. So
Because
this
look
is
at
all
that.
on the honor system.
73% said yes, they know who their state rep is. That's pretty good.
That's higher than I thought it would be.
All right, the next one. What is your mayor's top priority? Let's go to question number 2. What is your mayor's top priority? Kelly, everyone's just doing it.
I know.
Okay, I can't wait to see what come up right here. We get Parks and Rec, the community, this is good. Social services, helping people, attracting business, improving life in the city. The lake, that's interesting. Law enforcement, education, keeping the peace, saving money, planned growth, safety. A couple of these keep coming up. City safety, affordability. You see a couple of things right there you have some thoughts about already, Congresswoman?
Well, not on any of them
No gondola?
specifically.
Safety seems to be.
But I had a hunch if we asked this, we'd get a wide variety of answers, and we are. And this is from people who show up to something like this who are really politically engaged, so.
Yeah, we kind of self-select here. These are people who want to be involved.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's a pretty good sense of how close people are watching. So let's get to a state question really quickly.
Okay.
This is the first one. Do you know what Operation Gigawatt is? Any of you heard about this? You don't have to know, but
Again, we don't have any way of proving you wrong if you say you do.
our students do know what's going on, so that's pretty good. What number is that? 89, 90% say no, 10% say yes. This may be a perfect opportunity to talk about what this is, particularly given what you're working on.
Okay, so Operation Gigawatt is the governor's priority that he's outlined for bringing more energy production to Utah. We've got growing energy needs in the future, and it also is something that I'm really focused on. I'm on the Appropriations Committee, but I'm specifically on the Interior Subcommittee. So that has jurisdiction over most natural resources, And then I'm on the Energy and Water Subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over the rest of the natural resources. And I'm on the Natural Resources Committee. So we spend a lot of time talking about energy projects and energy policy and how we can make sure the policy encourages more energy production. And it's also a top priority for the governor. But 90% of you didn't know that, which reinforces what my suspicion is. So before I ran for Congress, I was a congressional staffer. And I used to tell my fellow staffers that we spend a lot of time trying to craft an image for our bosses and making sure everybody knows, that they believe in this, but they're not this far this way or this far this way. And then you go out and talk to people in the district and they know one thing about them, and it probably isn't even true. So we, in our little political bubble, we think we're talking to this huge audience all the time. We think everybody's hearing what we're saying all the time. But the reality is, most people don't know what we're doing, and that may be a sign of a healthy society if you don't spend a lot of time thinking about what Congress is doing or what the governor's doing. But even, I did a teletown hall last week, and I've decided I really like that format. I used to hate it. I liked being in person with people better, but I did a teletown hall last week. I had 19,000 people on there. And there's no way I could get 19,000 people in a room for a real town hall. But 19,000 people, I represent 833,000 people. I'm not that good at math in my head. If any of you are math savants, you can tell me what percentage that is, but it's fairly low, even for that big of a number. And so I think this question is kind of telling about that, especially in a room full of people who care about politics enough to come to this on an evening.
On the federal side, what is...
We'll do questions, but let's get a little further into this first. Let's do a question. Go ahead.
Wow, look at how adaptable she is. Let's hear it.
You guys are looking at bringing in the energy, the air quality as well in Utah has been rated like the 6th worst in the world. What are your plans or what do you plan on doing in regards to trying to keep the air quality the way it is or to either improve it while bringing in the energy?
Yeah, so hopefully we can improve it. One of the things I'm working on is trying to make sure that things like nuclear energy and geothermal energy that have a low impact on air quality are able to be permitted. We have the technology for them, but we're not building the plants, and part of it is federal policy that makes it hard to get them permitted. So we're working on those kind of things to make sure we can produce more energy in Utah and keep Utahns healthy at the same time. That was a good question.
It was a good question.
This flexibility is working out well. Let's keep going.
I like we should do this from now on. Then this next one is a little bit, see how people, what they know about it, our current elected officials and what their former jobs were. How about this next one right here? Before becoming lieutenant governor, that's our current lieutenant governor, Deidre Henderson, she held what position? County commissioner, a state senator, a litigator, county commissioner. We all know. Teacher.
This is fun to watch him move in real time.
That is. Get it working? Okay, let's see how. Of course, this is typically a University of Utah student, pretty well informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct.
Almost half of you got it right.
Yep, was a state senator. Now, this next one just kind of get the demographics of Utah just a little bit too. This next question, does Utah have more state senators than counties?
No, that's not what it says. Oh, there we go.
There, that's what's coming. Does Utah have more state senators than counties? Okay, for the sake of the audience, how many counties do we have? 29 counties. How many senators do we have?
It's going to give away the answer to the question. 29.
We have 29? That's correct.
But
maybe you give a little understanding of that.
So I talk to people all the time who assume that because we have 29 senators in 29 counties, that every senator represents a county, which is not the case because they all have to have the same size of constituency, and our counties vary drastically in population. So we do have the same number of senators and counties, but it is not because each senator represents one county. I live in Cedar City, down in my part of the state, our senator represents several counties.
Yeah, it's very common. Some people say it's just the two numbers are the same, so it must be that's the case, but important to know for wherever you live, you may have a senator that represents numerous counties. Okay, good level set. How about this? Because I want to talk about something I'm watching closely, the government shutdown.
What government shutdown?
Okay.
It's still
That's
out
what
there.
I was wondering. Here's the question. Government funding is set to run out. Here are a couple dates, very curious. And then you're going to tell us what's going to happen?
Sure.
Okay, can't wait to find out.
I'll give you my best guess.
All right, go ahead. We'll give everyone a chance to do this. Just lock in your answers.
Okay. I can now say with a really high level of confidence that you guys are much more informed than the average member of the population. It is September 30th, which this one was kind of an easy question because that is next week, and this is one of the top stories right now. But again, I work on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we have spent the majority of our time the last few weeks obsessing about this date. And most of the people I talk to don't know what day the fiscal year ends for the federal government. Now, right now, we're in a position, again, I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We passed all 12 of our appropriations bills out of committee. We've passed 3 of the 12 on the floor. We were actually on track to have everything done by September 30th. The Senate was behind us, and also the Senate has to pass them with 60 votes. We can pass appropriations bills in the House with just a Republican majority. In the Senate, it takes bipartisan votes, and that's why we just voted in the House on a continuing resolution through the end of November to give us time to get the Senate appropriations bills worked out so that we can pass final appropriations bills. The Senate voted on it, and it didn't pass. So now we're at an impasse, and we'll see what happens over the next week.
Can you just take a second about this back and forth, too? And there was a time politically when you didn't talk about government shutdowns like this. It is something we talk about a lot now.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about why that is the case and why maybe any of us would really care.
Well, there are a lot of reasons to care. I was in law school during the last long shutdown, and I remember, I was trying to do research on a paper, and there were government websites that I needed data from that I couldn't access. You tried to pull them up, and it would have like a frowny face that says, sorry, we're not funded, or something. I can't. It was very pithy.
Yeah, it was.
They didn't go into a lot of explanation. But the politics of funding the government have gotten trickier. And the idea of crossing the aisle to make sure the lights stay on has gotten more and more toxic. If you remember 6 months ago, we had the same situation, and Chuck Schumer, who is a Democrat, voted to keep the lights on, and he took a beating from his own side for that. And generally speaking, Democrats have been more loath to have a government shutdown than Republicans have. And now we're going to find out if that's still true. I think Senator Schumer bet 6 months ago that his side would see the wisdom in getting past that fight and moving on, keeping the government open to do other things. And they came after him pretty hard. I will say I think some of them were glad he kept the government open, but still jumped on the bandwagon because it was politically feasible, and that happens sometimes. So we'll find out in the next week. If we get 7 Senate Democrats to come to the table in the next week, then the government won't shut down. That really is what it comes down to. All of the podcasts, all of the articles written about it, try to make it sound really complicated, but that's what it's going to come down to.
Well, can I get one more question about this too, particularly given the area you represent? We have a lot of national parks in your district, for example. People might not realize you shut the government down, you're shutting down the parks. You're shutting down a lot of things that impact the economy of the state of Utah.
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on how long the shutdown lasts and who's in the White House when it shuts down. So if you remember during the big Obama shutdown, the politics were such that they wanted to make the shutdown as painful as possible for every American. And so that's when they had like chains across the national parks where you couldn't, even where you could like go drive up on a highway and look over and overlook, they chained it off. So that it would be clear that the government was shut down. They wanted people to be angry about it. During the last Trump shutdown, a lot of things stayed open. A lot of things were deemed essential because they wanted the shutdown to be the least painful it possibly could be so that people wouldn't be upset about it. And so even in a shutdown scenario, there's still politics at play about how the shutdown is handled.
Okay, we'll watch very closely. Thank you for that.
Me too.
Let's get to a couple things, just kind of testing sort of political knowledge a little bit as we get, I want to see how involved people are in the political process. The first question here is, have you ever been to a city council meeting? How many of you have been to a city council? We're going to do local and then we'll get up a little bit.
Can we limit it to here? Like if you
yeah,
went
sure.
to a city council meeting in your hometown when you were a Boy Scout, don't count that. Have you been to a city council meeting as an adult?
Okay. City council
somebody
meeting as
switched.
an adult. It changed a little bit.
Yeah. That is really close.
Getting less close. Your thoughts about this one? So as we start getting these finals, it looks like 57 not been, 43% have.
So as we were talking about changing up this format, one of the things I wanted to kind of get to the root of, sorry, I'm not looking over here very often because my mic's over here and I know they need to pick it up for the sound, but more people are plugged into big national issues than to their local issues. And one of the things we want to test is in a group like this, in really politically involved students, how true that still is, how much more involved you are or how much more plugged in you are to big national stories than what's going on locally. And you're definitely more plugged in than average, but still higher involvement probably on national issues.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Do you have a comment about getting engaged at the local level like this?
Yeah, and I've said this for a long time, since way before I was involved in Congress as a staffer or as a member. Your local politics are the easiest place to make an impact. For people who feel like they don't have the ability to change the direction of this country or they're not being heard, it is so much easier to show up to a city council meeting and make a good point and have people respond, or to get your county to do something, than the federal government. Even at the state level, it's just a lot easier to have an impact. And a lot of people, I talk to people all the time who want to run for Congress someday, and they say, what should I do? And I tell them, go run for your school board or your city council or county commission or, your PTA. Get involved somewhere first. And once you have an intimate knowledge of how this works, it's easier to make a decision about if you want to actually run, for starters. But you also get a sense of what it takes to make policy changes. It's not easy even at the local level, but it's more possible at the local level. And you kind of get a feel for what soft skills are necessary. And I think it's a good gateway to getting elected at the federal level, but I think for a lot of people, what they want is to make a difference, and they can find that on the local level, and they don't have to destroy their lives like I did.
Oh, the next one.
That was a little too negative.
Yeah,
I'm grateful to be where I am.
We're grateful that you're here today answering in this way. This is kind of interesting format. I like it. How many of you have attended this next question, Nick, if you're ready? Have you ever attended a political rally? You have?
Or you have a question?
Or you have a question? We got you.
That's right. We're encouraging involvement.
Yes.
Raise your hand.
See, it's all kinds of involvement. Does everyone lock in their answer there a little bit?
Okay, so while you're finishing up with these, I will tell you, I've never been a political rally kind of person. I care about policy. I've never really been that big on politics. I know that sounds weird. It's what I do now. But I got into politics because I care about policy. But something interesting happened to me yesterday. I was in Arizona yesterday for the Charlie Kirk Memorial. And I had to fly in on a late flight, fly back on a late flight, and it was giving me flashbacks to a year ago when I flew to Arizona for a Trump rally, and I'd never been to a Trump rally before. But as I was walking out yesterday, a kid stopped me and said, he yelled, Congresswoman Maloy, which, in large groups of people outside of Utah, that doesn't happen very often. And I turned around and he said, can I just shake your hand? Sure, I shook his hand. And he said, I heard you speak last year. It was my first time even going to one of these big rallies, and I spoke. But I talked about policy. I got up and said, this is why I'm involved. I think we need, less regulation, more regulation that makes sense, and less red tape. And this kid who went to a rally, heard that speech, remembered it, and said, because of that, I've been getting involved in politics. And I thought
Excellent.
That was kind of cool. Not
Excellent.
what I expected a reaction to a rally to be.
Well, often from these rallies, you start getting connected to the issues that matter most to you, and hopefully you get engaged from it.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one will be this. Have you ever worked in a political campaign? Have you ever worked on a political campaign?
I can promise you this one is much, much higher than the average in the population.
Wow, it's warming my heart about
Yeah.
these folks. So everyone kind of locked in? 32% of the class, people here, going down just a little bit, have worked on a campaign. That's a pretty good number. That might be more than you might think.
Yeah, that is a really high number.
Talk about how this works for this campaign.
So now that I have campaigned, anyone who is willing to volunteer on a campaign is extremely valuable because you cannot cover all the ground yourself, and you can't hire enough people unless you have tapped into some gold under the rainbow somewhere that I've never been able to find. You cannot run a campaign with paid people or by yourself. It takes so many volunteers. But the thing that I love about people who are willing to get involved in a campaign is those are people who are willing to get involved in the community in other ways. There's a really high correlation between I'm willing to show up and work on a campaign and I try to solve problems in my community. So you guys are amazing that way. And my fear right now, especially in light of Charlie Kirk being shot in Utah less than 2 weeks ago, is that people your age are going to pull back. It happened on a college campus. And everyone who was there suddenly felt vulnerable. Everyone who watched it on TV, I think, felt a little vulnerable. And I worry for all of you that you're going to make a calculation that being involved, showing up at things isn't worth the risk. But you all are participating at a lot higher level than most people already. So let's go to some of the other questions and see the...
Because the next question gets to this very issue. So let's see how you all feel about political involvement, and maybe you can continue that thought you just had. The next question here, how concerned, if at all, are you about political violence in the United States today? How concerned are you?
So I will tell you, I've been asked this question a lot in the last 2 weeks. But you have numbers on this, right?
Yeah, so I want to give you some polling too. Is that all right? Maybe I'll just give you that while we look at these final numbers here. So of the people here today, 58%, or mostly locked in, 58%, is it 55? 55% are concerned about political violence in the United States. 40% somewhat concerned. 2% not at all. 2% don't know. Can I put this in context where this group is with some polling that we've done, the Hinckley Institute with the Deseret News just this past week. We asked the very same question of Utahns, and the number was 90%. 90% of Utahns are concerned about political violence in the United States. And just to show you how universal this is as you give your answer.
We're at 95.
Yeah, exactly where I was going with this. And it's all political parties. 97% are Republicans, 87% of Democrats, 82% of independents. Across the board, and this group, this is a concern.
It is interesting that independents are the least concerned. I mean, it's still a really high number.
Still 82.
But it's the lowest.
Yeah, and they have we'll do another question here about who they think is responsible also in just a moment. But go through that number for just a minute for us, because this is a universal answer, it seems.
Let's do this next question first, and then we'll unpack them both at the same time.
Okay, the next one. Nick, you have it up. How safe, if at all, do you feel attending political events or rallies are in the U.S. today? How safe are they?
Interesting. Okay, this is really fascinating. So 94% of you think it's not safe, or you're concerned about violence, but
89.
But 50%, 49% of you think it's you would feel somewhat safe attending a political rally. So this is kind of what I wanted to get at today with, I would hate to see people your age, and especially people who are already inclined to get involved in politics, back down and step away from involvement. But even though you have a feeling that it's not always safe, you would still feel safe attending a rally. That makes me feel a lot better, although 40% of you said not very safe. And this is a question that I get asked a lot right now, and all of my colleagues. So we've had a lot of debate in the House the last couple weeks about do we need to increase security for members of Congress, and if so, how much do we need to increase it? And how safe do we feel? And I would tell you, we are all over the board on that one. Some of my colleagues are more controversial than I am, and they get a lot more threats than I do. I actually feel I'm in that pretty safe category. I am out meeting with people. I'm out in the public. I went to the memorial yesterday. I think it's dangerous for politicians to start feeling like they have to be separated from the people they represent. But a lot of people who are involved in politics have very complicated feelings right now about being at large public events. And a lot of participants who normally show up are having complicated feelings about being at public events. Unless you want to add something, I want to hold on to anything else until we see some of these other questions.
Okay, I can do a couple more, but because at some point I want to get to how you find that balance, because what can easily happen is you stop participating, or the connection between the constituents and their representatives just disappears.
Yeah.
You want to wait on that one for just a minute, or you want to give us some thoughts about that? Because that could be what happens.
Yeah, so I'm sure you all subscribe to my newsletter, so you all know this. But I put out a couple videos in the last couple weeks about people your age. I really am concerned about you disengaging. And I think the thing that unites us as Americans, and this isn't just me thinking, the thing that unites us as Americans is our system of government. It's our Constitution. We aren't a country that's united by religion. We're not a country that's united by ethnicity. We're united by ideas. And my concern is that if people don't feel safe at political events or even big public gatherings, that we start to back away from the things that make us Americans. If you don't feel like you can stand up in a crowd and tell me that I'm wrong, then we've lost something that makes us us. If I don't feel like I can stand in front of a crowd of you and tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I think it's right, then we've lost something. And my fear right now is that we will have a reaction to real things that are actually happening in the world that makes it worse. The less we trust each other to do the right thing and behave in public, the less we will interact in public and in big ways. And the more we all feel safe with people who agree with us, the more we'll retreat to our own corners and not talk to people who disagree with us. And when we've stopped having those interactions, I don't think our system of government can function that way. And I know that sounds maybe hyperbolic. I know it also sounds a little maybe political theory more than political reality, but I'm concerned that that's the direction we're headed. And so I'm spending a lot of time right now trying to make sure that we don't head that direction, that everybody understands that disagreeing is not just okay, but a really important part of our country functioning. And if we don't know how to get together and disagree, we're going to stop doing it.
Let me do a couple follow-ups.
Okay.
One of these questions that, it's not one that I put up here, but was connected to the poll that I was talking about. We asked the question of Utahns, who do you think bears the most responsibility for the current climate of political violence in the United States?
I have a feeling I'm not going to like this one.
Well, probably not, but it was 43% of Utahns said the group that bears most responsibility are politicians, followed by media at 29% and social media at 29%. Talk about that for just a moment, because who's responsible for helping us with this dialogue?
So I'm just going to point out that this is a poll of people's perception of who's at fault, and I'm going to push back on it a little bit. So politicians get a bad rap because it's easy to dislike politicians, and it's a good way for everyone to bond. But most of what you're hearing that makes you think politicians are the problem, you're getting through media and social media, and they intentionally make sure you're seeing the worst of all of us. And I have taken a crash course in this the last couple of years, and there are a lot of times I will talk to a media outlet for 10 minutes, and then I see the quotes they use, and I'm like, yeah, I said those words, but when you take out all the words in between, it really changes the tone of what I was saying. And so I've had this conversation a lot of times recently with groups of lawyers where they've asked me, how do we take down the temperature in politics? How do we heal some of the division in politics? And no one ever likes my answer, but I'm going to keep giving it because I think it's the right answer. The only way it's going to change, politicians are not going to change this because we have all the wrong incentives. And I say this as someone who is known for being even-keeled, and I don't play the clickbait game. But that being said, the only way we're going to heal the divisions and the only way we're going to take down the temperature is for all of you to change the way you consume information. If you love Trump and you click on every article that says that he, left someone speechless or dropped a mic on someone, or if you hate Trump and you click on every headline that says he's a criminal and it's unconstitutional, whatever the thing is, and he's going to jail, you are making the problem worse. And I have colleagues who have cracked this code, and everything they do is calculated to get those clickbait headlines, because that's what people click on. If you're scrolling through social media and you're stopping on all the things that agree with you, we are going to stay politically divided. You could be right all day long and still break our system.
Let me ask, I promised about the independents, so this gets to who's the right and who's wrong. This is the last one from the poll I was going to read to you. Do you feel that the left or the right bears more responsibility for political violence in the United States today? So here's how it came, as you might expect. 44% of Republicans said it was the left, 52% of Democrats said it was the right, and interestingly, 44% of independents said the left and the right equally.
I'm actually surprised that the left and the right didn't blame each other at higher percentages. This is progress. We're getting somewhere.
To that point right there, and I just want to grab one more thing you were saying here for our students that we talk about this. The need to really understand the other side. One might not realize, you might understand your own opinions better if you better understand the other side's opinions and approach.
Yeah, so steel sharpens steel, right? We've all heard this. And it sounds like maybe a cold-blooded way of arguing for more debate and more dialogue. And it is true that when you go debate somebody, when you engage with someone who disagrees with you, you hone your own arguments and they get better. But it is also true that when you have to stand there and look another human being in the eye and make arguments, you're more likely to soften your own stance and to see the humanity behind someone else's argument. So I was a lawyer before I got into politics, and the law in this country is an adversarial system. And so they train us in law school to think like lawyers. That's what they say. We're not training you how to be a lawyer, we're training you how to think like a lawyer. And one of the things they do, at least at my law school, what they did, so your first year of law school, when you're terrified and they're breaking you down to build you back up, the first semester they have you write a legal memo on an issue that's a close call, where there's a circuit split or something, and they split your class in half, and half of you write a memo arguing on the one side, and half of you write the same memo but arguing for the other side. And that's how you learn to do legal. I think they do legal research first and then writing. At least that would make sense. I can't remember anymore. And my sister and I were in the same law school class, and we were assigned opposite sides of this. And so we would walk at night back to our apartment, and we would be talking about it. And I would say, well, I'm making this argument, and my sister would get so no, that argument doesn't work because of this case. So you kind of fall in love with your arguments that you're making, and you get so convinced that you're right. And then this is where they do their law school jujitsu on you. You come back after Christmas break, new semester, now you're in legal writing, and they have you write a brief, and they make you switch sides. They never tell you they're going to do that. So you fall in love with these arguments, and you're so convinced that you know what the court would do. And then the next semester, they make you write a brief about the same issue, but on the other side of the issue. And people's brains start to melt because they were so convinced when they were assigned to write on one side. Then when you're assigned to write on the other side, you have to find good arguments. And so you do. And by the end of the semester, you're like, well, maybe some of the points I made the first semester were really good, but now I can see this. And that is a skill that we need to have as Americans. We've got to be able to, even if you have strongly held beliefs on one side, we've got to be able to look at the other side and understand the merits of the argument. The dean of students when I was in law school would always tell me, nobody is all good or all bad, and two thinking people are going to disagree. You're not going to marry someone who agrees with you on everything. You're not going to have a roommate who agrees with you on everything. Two people who can think are going to find points of disagreement. But we can all still live together in society if we understand the rules and if we know how to negotiate real human issues. And that's the skill that I'm afraid we're losing when people are on social media and reading in the media about controversial things, but blaming someone else for it being controversial. So I'm just going to point out that the people who responded to the survey are blaming politicians, but they're probably consuming really lopsided media.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to read the other side, watch it, listen to it. Let's get to this next question. Nick, you have it up? This is the next one. Has the killing of Charlie Kirk made you feel more or less likely to attend political events or rallies? Just a second, we're almost there. For those of you who are watching the live stream, the numbers, looks like it's 54% said neither more nor less likely to attend. 31% said somewhat less likely to attend. 6% much less likely to attend. 4% much more likely to attend. 4% somewhat more likely, and don't know after that. So our biggest number is 54% said neither more nor less.
I can say with 100% certainty that I'm in the much more likely to attend category because I was not planning on going to a political event yesterday and I went. So it makes me feel a lot better to see that 54% number, though, that roughly half of you are not going to make your decisions about whether to attend based on that. I hope that means you're still likely to attend and not that you were never going to go to a political event in the first place and that doesn't change it for you. But I have another story I want to tell you, and this is probably as good a place as any. So today's Monday. Yesterday, I was in Arizona at that rally. Saturday, the day before that, I was in Washington, D.C. And I had some friends with me from Cedar City, and we were walking the National Mall. And on a Saturday, there are all kinds of people walking the National Mall, but one of those friends had never been to D.C. before, and so I was showing her the sights. We were walking the monuments. And as we were walking along by the reflecting pool, somebody was jogging towards us. And there are a lot of people who jog on the National Mall on Saturdays. And he was wearing camo running gear and had on a Padres hat. And, just looked like kind of an average person. As we were coming this way, he was running this way, he stopped and walked over to us and said, "Hey, I'm lost, can you help me?" I thought that was kind of weird. And I said, "Yeah, where do you want to go?" And he said, "I don't know how to find Palestine. Could you find it on a map?" And I said, I could, but are you running to Palestine? He said, "Well, you probably march for Palestine and you probably don't know anything about it. You look like a liberal." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I would not describe myself as a liberal. And he said, "You look like a liberal," and then ran on. And I thought, that is what's wrong with everything right now. I mean, I do happen to be in politics, but I was just out walking with my friends. He didn't know who I was. At least I assume he didn't. And I was wearing like a pink skirt and a yellow shirt. Maybe now I'm wearing pink and yellow again. Maybe that's like a code. I don't know. But there was nothing about that interaction that was going to change anyone's mind. There was nothing about that interaction that was going to make anyone's life better. Or, I mean, for some reason, he felt like yelling at people on the National Mall was going to prove some sort of point. And I actually support Israel, so whatever point he was trying to prove, I'm not the person he needed to prove it to. And I don't know who he is, so if he's watching, he can call and dispute my version of events. But the reason I tell a story is because I think you especially, you're younger than me, have grown up with, these short social media interactions where it's like, oh, look at this person mic drop on someone, or look at this person own someone, or this person left someone speechless. And those get a lot of clicks. And it may have created an illusion that is an effective form of dialogue and interaction. But he didn't change anybody's mind, and I doubt he felt better. It was just a, random encounter on the National Mall. And now I'm really going to think about what I wear when I go for a walk. But other than that, and so, has the killing of Charlie Kirk made you feel more or less likely to attend events? I'm glad to see that it's actually not moving most of you, because I think knee-jerk reactions tend to be bad reactions and lead to more of those sort of drive-by encounters instead of real human connection. And I think the answer to a lot of the problems, so I just told you I don't think it's fair to blame politicians, and that you have the power to change it. I think the way to change it is to have actual, meaningful human connections with other people. Everybody saw the drama on the floor. I mean, we went to the floor to vote within minutes of most of us finding out that someone had been shot in Utah. I think I was walking to the floor when I found out for sure that Charlie Kirk was dead. And so it was still very fresh and raw for everybody when we all got to the House floor. So now you have everybody there at the same time. And the clip you saw on the news was just somebody asking for a prayer on the floor and then a bunch of people booing. And that was really upsetting, especially if you were there. What you didn't see, if you could zoom back out, is we'd had a moment of silence, and everybody was really respectful through the moment of silence. Then one of my colleagues asked if someone could lead the House in prayer, and then the booing started. And as we left, I got on the elevator, and one of my friends who's on a committee with me and is a Democrat, and we've traveled together, so we know each other. There was a whole bunch of people in the elevator, and she reached around someone and squeezed my elbow and said, "Hey, I saw that this was in Utah, and this is probably really tough for your constituents. I hope you're okay." So if you were watching the news, you saw a moment in time. But what you didn't see was what happened before and what happened after. And it's still okay to have a reaction to that moment in time. It doesn't change the way you feel about that, but it is safe to assume that you're not seeing the whole story. And when you know people, when you're having real interactions with people, you're more likely to see more of that story and not base your political opinions, your opinions of people, your view of where you are in the world on just the clip. Too much of our political discourse is clipped, and it's short. And now I'm going to tell one more story because now I'm not used to letting other people talk for this long. The other thing that happened that day that for me was really meaningful, and I hope this translates for all of you. But so I was sitting in a committee markup when we all got the news, and it said Utah, and I'm the only Utahn on that committee, so everybody was asking me questions as if I knew what was going on. And so when we went down to the floor to vote, I mean, emotions were high. Adrenaline was all of a sudden, everybody was kind of wound up. And as I stepped onto the House floor, one of my colleagues who knows that I love babies and had his baby with him that day handed me a baby. So I walked in this like high state of, readiness, and he handed me the baby, and the baby is cute, and he was feeling cuddly, and he just snuggled down onto me, and I was holding him, and I could feel like my stress levels come down and my heartbeat regulate, and we got through the vote and everything, and then I had to give the baby back. I checked legally, I couldn't keep it. But the reason I tell you that story is because I do think human interactions are the answer. It is really easy to stand, across a line from each other. We have an aisle, whatever line you have, and disagree with the people on the other side. But just the baby didn't say anything about politics. He didn't even do anything for me. Babies are kind of selfish. All he did was sleep. He didn't tell me it was going to be okay, but just having contact with another human being helped bring that level down where I was in a better state for talking to people. I suspect I am not the only human who needs to be in contact with other human beings to be calm. But when we're in conflict with other human beings, then we tend to get that high adrenaline level, the high levels of anxiety, the high levels of stress.
Thank you for the responses. Are you willing to get a little flavor for where students are?
Yeah.
Not on the political side,
to.
but I'm curious. Some of you here, students of the university, took a survey recently about what we call the Campus Climate Survey, to see if people feel like their voices are being heard, if all voices are welcome on campus. Of course, the Hinckley Institute is about all voices, and so this next question is try to get us where our students might be, at least where this group is. And the next question here, if we have it, Nick, is this: do you worry that openly expressing your political beliefs might hurt your educational or future career prospects? Very important question.
Yeah.
Almost there, wow. So for those watching, do you worry that openly expressing your political beliefs might impact your educational career prospects? Of this group, 81% said yes. This is sort of consistent with what we're seeing. So what do you do when you think, I have an opinion, political, otherwise, and I feel there's a ramification for me expressing it?
So this one's tricky, especially right now. I know there's a lot of dialogue right now about what political opinions people should be expressing at work. And I think this is where that practice at disagreeing and talking about hard topics comes in. If you are expressing your political beliefs by posting an angry rant, that is much more likely to hurt your educational and career prospects than if you're having meaningful conversations with people in your classes or at work about where you are politically. And if we lose the ability to do the second, then we're losing. I would love for us to lose the ability to do the first. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't necessarily make it the right thing to do. And it's cheap political interaction to go say something from the safety of your screen that you wouldn't say if you were having a real conversation with a real person. So it does concern me that that 80% of the people in here are worried that if they openly talk about their political beliefs, it will hurt their careers. We have to get that number turned around. And I think the way we get that number turned around is practice talking about difficult things in constructive ways. I think most people would actually love to be able to have campuses and workplaces where you could have real dialogue about real issues. But I'm not sure anyone, maybe a few people, maybe 20%, want to be in a situation where somebody is haranguing you at work or in class because they're so sure their political views are right and you're an idiot until they tell you one more time and you crack and decide they're right. And we've all been there. So if we can, on the spectrum of political interaction, if we can move towards the, handing someone a baby end of the spectrum and away from the mic drop on Twitter, and it's not Twitter anymore, but I think that number could flip around.
Okay, well, let's keep this number with the next question, put this into context. For you as students or otherwise, have you ever self-censored your own political beliefs in the classroom? Let's talk about you're in your classroom, you have a certain political belief, you decide, I better not say that in this, this particular class or this particular group. How many of you have self-censored yourself?
Interesting.
So at least for this particular group, 65% have self-censored their political beliefs in the classroom. Looks like so 66, 34% said no. Put those two things together because it looks like our students are worried about their educational, like maybe a professor will have a reaction to the things you said with the fact that people are now self-censoring, at least 65%.
But at least 15% of them are speaking out anyway. So this is actually shaping up a little bit like the political involvement question where people are worried about their safety, or they're worried that they're not safe, but they're not worried about their safety, they'll show up anyway. People are worried it's going to impact their future careers or their educational prospects, but some of them are speaking up anyway, which gives me hope. I know they're not great numbers. I know we'd like to see those numbers flipped around, but I am happy to see that even people who are concerned are willing to engage.
Yeah. Would you have some advice for the students here looking at that? So 80% are worried about it. 65% of those are not saying what they want to say. What kind of counsel do you give for people in that category? I'm worried and I don't.
Yeah. So my advice, and keep in mind, I do politics for a living, so I do this, is go practice. Go practice talking to people about the things that actually matter to you. Part of the reason I think people self-censor is because they're worried about, having to have an argument. But I think at least part of the reason is people don't get enough practice articulating things that are controversial, and so they worry that if they try to say it, they're not going to say it right, and then everyone's going to pile on them just because they're not. So I've been talking to people your age saying, go join a club, or if you can't find one, start one, where you talk about politics and religion and whatever controversial topics you care about. Get in the habit of talking to people about it, because again, steel sharpens steel. And if you're in the habit of talking about it, and you're talking to people who aren't on your side all the time, then you're not going to self-censor out of that fear that you're inarticulate or that you won't say it right. And in my experience, that's what holds a lot of people back. And then some of it is just, if you feel outnumbered, there aren't a lot of people who want to throw themselves into the lion's den, so to speak, when they're outnumbered. But if you get some good practice at talking about what you believe and not trying to make everyone else agree with you, but just telling them how you feel, it gets easier even to do that. Got a question?
So I'm the president of the College of Public Institute at the University of Utah. And me personally, I'll be loud about my beliefs and I don't really mind it. I get your sentiment towards my fellow conservatives. However, what do you say to those conservatives who are more scared of getting scrutinized or stereotyped for what they believe in class? As many of us are college students, we know that getting stereotyped is probably a lot worse than some of those other outcomes.
So let me ask you this. As the president of the College of Republicans, do you feel like you get stereotyped and scrutinized, or do people, for the most part, respect that you're willing to talk about what you believe?
I would probably say the latter. I'm pretty loud about it. I don't think many people would probably care.
Yeah.
Or they probably would have wanted to debate with me about it.
So I think this is true of, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative too. So I'm on the same side as you. But I think it's true of a lot of people on our side that there's this idea that if you say something, you're going to get canceled or you're going to get whatever. But if you actually go out and start talking to people, that doesn't happen. And I have people say this to me all the time, like, well, you're not allowed to say blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who doesn't allow you to say it? Well, they'll come after you. Like, who's they? It's the fear of it is much bigger than the actual threat. And that's why I think the practice matters, because if you have practiced doing this, one, you'll be better at it, but two, the people around you will get used to hearing what you're saying and interacting with it in a meaningful way, instead of it just being like you can't say that around here kind of conversation. So thank you for being the president of the College of Republicans and for being willing to talk about what you believe. It's good for all of us. We are better as a country when people will go out and talk about where they are politically. And you don't have to even do it always with the goal of winning people over. Sometimes just having the debate is enough.
We talked about the classroom. We only have a couple minutes left. I want to talk about what's happening outside of the classroom, family and friends. Curious about that. The next question here, do you speak openly about politics with your friends? We know what you're thinking about on campus. How about with your friends? You pretty open? Look at that already.
Yeah, I think that's one person.
What's that? Openly talk about politics with your friends. It's interesting. Politics has become so personal.
Yeah.
And so curious how this question, because we're going to take this one and we'll ask the second one, because we're going to end on these two right here. Do you speak openly about politics with your friends? That's almost everyone.
Yeah,
96% of people do that. Now, how about your family? Do you speak openly about politics with your family?
This one's much higher than I expected too, although it's fluctuating.
Nick, did you say, can you go back and show both answers really quick, or no? So go back really quick to the one before that.
Okay, so everybody get their voting in here. Now we're going to go back to friends.
So friends was 96%, talk about it with friends, and then family is, go back to that one now, Nick, so you can see, 83% openly. These are still pretty high numbers, but it's interesting. Different from the classroom. Talk about those and maybe some.
Nick, can you add a question while I talk about this? I want to know.
What is the question?
So those of you who are talking to your friends about politics, which is almost everybody, are you talking to friends who disagree with you?
All right, can we add that one, Nick? We're testing his skills right now.
I know, this
but
is
Nick
great.
is infinitely capable. All right, so the question is, do you talk with friends who are on the other side?
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
Okay.
You got that one almost ready, Nick? Look how good he is.
Okay.
Do you talk with friends who disagree with you? Is that okay?
When I'm talking about getting in the habit of having these conversations, I'm really glad. Now, granted, we're sitting with a bunch of political science majors probably, and people who are willing to show up to an event like this. So you like talking politics more than the average person, but you are talking. And then, so 96% of you talk to your friends about politics, and 80% of you talk to your friends who disagree with you, which means you're already doing more of this than you probably give yourself credit for. And we all have a family member we don't like talking politics with. And now I'm the one they all want to take down at Thanksgiving dinner. So I get that. But the engagement still matters. having the ability to sit and eat turkey at the same table as someone who is wrong. Even if this isn't just a matter of like opinion, they could be objectively wrong. But if you can still sit down with them and still have conversations with them and still see them as a human being, we are going to be all right as a country. And there's a lot of talk happening right now about people your age. Some of the high profile incidents lately, they've been people your age. And people my age are worried that you were teenagers during COVID and you stayed home on the internet during some formative years, and maybe you didn't develop the skills of being able to engage and talk to people and handle these things constructively, but you're proving that that isn't true, and that gives me a lot of hope. So I'm gonna end with this, and then I'll let you have the last word because this is your house. But don't pull back. I don't think isolation is going to be helpful for any of us. Step up, lean in, learn how to have the hard conversations. I have never seen an idea get better because nobody challenges it. I've never seen a bill get better because everyone just agrees with it. When you can put an idea out there and let other people have a whack at it in constructive ways, your ideas get better. When we have a policy or a plan or an idea, it is helpful to have other people weigh in, and they're not always going to be positive. And if you can learn that skill of, I care about this idea, but I'm willing to listen to other people and see where they're coming from, you'll end up with not just a better idea, but at least where I work, where it takes 218 votes to pass something in the House and 60 in the Senate, which means you have to have people from the other side of the aisle, you end up with something that's more likely to succeed. You have more buy-in. And not only is it easier to get a bill passed if you have bipartisan buy-in, but then it's not going to get quickly reversed as soon as the White House flips or the House flips or the Senate flips. If you have buy-in from a lot of people, then they're not going to immediately try to burn it down the first chance they get. So thank you for playing along. I know we changed the format and you guys were great about doing this, and it has given me a lot of hope for where you are headed. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Maloy. We appreciate you all participating in this today. These are conversations that are just so critical for us to have. When it comes to our speech, the solution for the speech we disagree with is more speech.
Yes.
More speech, ability to understand the other side, because what I worry about sometimes is when we get disillusioned, we stop engaging, but we need more engagement, not less. We're grateful for all these students that see that, particularly here that stay engaged. Grateful for this very important conversation. Let's give a hand to Congresswoman Celeste Maloy.
Thank you.
I just want to add briefly on behalf of Sutherland Institute, thank you all for being here and participating. And of course, thanks to the Congresswoman and to Jason for that conversation. Once again, I want to recognize our sponsor, Zions Bank, for making this possible, and the Hinckley Institute for this wonderful venue to have these conversations. The Congressional series continues. Please visit sutherlandinstitute.org to keep up to date with all of those, and thank you again for being here.